musical chairs today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure he gets here.
Well, what are we next to?
Well, why not?
Okay, next item on the agenda, the mid-block pedestrian path at Escuela Bilingüe Internacional. Naru.
We have for you a consideration of the design of a mid-block pedestrian path at EBI. Just as a background, the EBI use permit was approved by the City Council on May 19th of last year, and the reason why the City Council approved it was because the Planning Commission approved it in March, and on appeal it went to the Council, and then the Council approved it. And so an EBI is a school, an independent school which caters to pre-K to Class 8. And as part of one of the conditions of the use permit was design and construction of this mid-block pathway connecting 45th Street and 47th Street. And this is the condition of approval. Basically, it outlines the timing and the process of the design and the construction of the path, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. And this is what you saw at the study session in June. This is the path on the eastern, along the eastern property line. It's a 20-foot wide pedestrian path with a 6-foot wide pathway, which is going to be made of asphalt. And the red is the 8-foot high wrought iron fence. After taking in the comments at the study session, they presented their final design. It kind of gives you the details of the tree and the plant palette, which I will let their landscape architect talk a little bit more about it. But I would like to highlight a few things. One is that they're proposing a mural along this wall. In addition to that, they have a convex mirror installed in order to address some of the security concerns regarding the kink here. They are also proposing trash receptacles, pet waste bag dispensers, and pedestrian-only signs at the two ends of the pathway. A few meetings were held regarding this issue. A community meeting was held in April of this year, and the key issue was security. And the suggestion was made that construction of gates on either side of the path be installed. At the Planning Commission study session, again, this was a key issue. A number of citizens spoke on it, and the majority of the commissioners who were present were okay with the gates being installed and the path being closed during the night. The BPAC, or the Bicycle Pedestrian Subcommittee, discussed this item at the June meeting, and the subcommittee voted that no gates be installed, and that the security concerns be addressed by removal of the jog in the path. Now, the condition of approval that talks about the process and the design and the construction of the path, and I've highlighted the portion that is critical today regarding the gates. And it states that the pathway shall at all times remain open and accessible to the public for pedestrian access only. If security becomes a problem in the future, the City Council may require the installation of gates at either end of the path to be locked during nighttime hours and unlocked during the daytime hours, with the exact hours to be specified by the Council, and that the applicant shall be responsible for installing, locking, and unlocking any such gates. Given this language of the condition of approval, the gates cannot be required until security concern has been established, at which point it would be considered by the City Council to require such gates. And therefore, the applicant has proposed the final design without the gates. So that concludes my presentation, and after hearing the presentation and receiving public testimony, we recommend approval for this project. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Yeah, could you provide a little clarification on what the BPAC is saying? Or they're saying basically put the path directly through?
Yeah, they want this. They want it straightened out.
Yeah, I can elaborate on that a little bit too, since I was at the meeting. Yeah, it was basically over security concerns that the committee felt that, the committee felt that since there was no straight view through the pathway, that it would be safer if it was straightened out.
Well, that would take a huge chunk of their property. Private property.
Do you mean that the entire path would be perfectly straight from 47th to 45th with no bend at all, or that the path itself wouldn't have that curviness in it on the south part?
That the path would be straight, so the easement would be a straight shot from 47th to 45th.
Oh, so then there would be
It would leave some, kind of portion of EBI's property that's free and clear without an easement, kind of orphaned to the east.
That option was floated when the project was originally approved by the City Council. And the City Council rejected that idea in favor of a path that's just along the eastern 20 feet of the property, reflecting the bend in the property line. I think EBI convinced the council that that would leave them with a remnant parcel that would be somewhat unusable.
So is there any kind of direction or clarification on what would comprise, what would it take to establish a security concern?
It could be, well, there is no direction on that. It would, yeah. And the council did not discuss that at that meeting either, when they imposed this condition.
I think it would just have to be sufficient to convince the City Council that there was a problem.
So the condition is worded in such a way that gates can be required if there is a security concern, is that correct?
Yes.
So who would make that determination of a security concern?
City Council.
Okay. So this would have to go, so in order to add the gates, it would have to go back to the council for their approval.
That is correct, and it would not come to the commission.
Just the gates.
Just the
Just the
gates.
gates, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the design is not going to go to the council for approval.
Correct, right.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Staff? Thank you, Maru. Does the applicant wish to come forward and speak?
Good evening, Commission, Council. My name is John Horsch. I serve on the Board of Trustees at Escuela Bilingüe Internacional. It's nice to see you again. It was nicer when we brought kids. We got earlier on the agenda, so we're going to take that under advisement for future hearings. Just have a quick, oops, not that, or that, or that. Thought it was here somewhere, sorry. Thank you. I really can't see this.
Press F5.
Thank you. There we go. Great. I know that you're all very familiar with EBI, and it's late, and I don't want to take a lot of time, but just to refresh who we are and why we're here. An independent school is a mission-driven school, and so our mission is critical to everything we do. The mission of EBI is to provide an excellent Spanish-English bilingual education based on the highest international academic standards in an environment that thrives on diversity, fosters global citizenship, and develops the character necessary to recognize that cultural uniqueness is the touchstone of our common humanity. Maru touched on the highlights of the pedestrian path. As you know, our conditional use permit requires us to develop and maintain this path. The construction is required to be completed prior to our occupancy of the entire building at 4550, which we currently anticipate to be in the neighborhood of 2016. And in preparation for tonight, as you well know, we've undergone a very extensive planning and design process. It included a community meeting. It's included further discussions with neighbors and our own design team. And it included the study session in front of you earlier this year. Just to recap the considerations that we wanted to undertake in the design of this path, I think as it relates to security, I listed safety number one. We are a school. We have kids here. We are a neighbor in the neighborhood, and so I think security is something that's very important to us, and designing a space that can be safe is critical for us. We also want it to be a functional and attractive space that serves both the community and the school, that it has a strong connection to the community and also to EBI. We feel like that serves both to integrate the school into the community and also hits on the first point of safety, that it feels like a occupied and engaged space, and integrating with EBI and the community in that way. Also, sustainability is a core value at EBI. We are a certified green business, and the plantings and landscape design certainly reflect that mission and value. So Maru touched on the path design. Jeffrey Miller is here. He's our landscape architect for Miller & Company. I'm going to let him talk a little bit about the modifications that we've made to the design since we appeared before you for the study session, and answer any questions.
Hi there, I'm Jeff Miller. Nice to see you again. Hi. So from the last meeting, this is what's happened. We've changed the path material from decomposed granite to asphalt at a request to cut down on any dust that could happen in the neighborhood. We've added pedestrian-only signage at either end of the path. We've added pet waste bag dispensers and trash containers. We've added a convex mirror at the jog to increase the visibility. We've increased the size of the tree wells. You'll note their size on the plans. And we'll further consult with a city arborist as we go ahead as to the appropriate size for those tree wells. We've straightened the path as much as possible in the lower 45th side. We want to maintain a little bit of a jog there so that we can get a design of the trees that don't overhang the neighbors' properties. We're planting the smaller trees against the wall side of the property and the larger trees on the EBI side. And those are really the changes that have taken place. We've kind of identified the plant materials a little more in this plan from what you saw in the past. So we're actually pretty happy with the plan as it is, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the developments of the plan.
So if gates were to be required, then the school would be able to close off the north end of the parking lot entirely? Is that how it would work?
Yeah, because there's a fence all the way along 47th Street.
Understanding the obvious challenges of straightening the path completely, I did suggest to the applicant kind of a scenario in which the pathway would become kind of on a median in the parking area that might allow it to be straight. And I was just curious if you explored that option any further.
We didn't really explore that option. This is the first I've heard of that, but I think part of, what I think the issue becomes the resultant property to the east, and does that have any use for EBI in the future as they look to, building out the school property. So I think that nobody within the EBI community would look kindly on giving up any more of the property. Perhaps the property owner on the north side could give up 20 feet of their property, and we could straighten the path directly through that way. I mean, we didn't really explore anything else because this was the direction that we were provided to make the path in. This was the area where the path was going to go.
That issue has been dealt with by the city council.
Yeah, I was just looking at other scenarios, and I in just roughly sketching something out, I was, I couldn't make sure that it worked, but I was curious if they had explored it more.
I guess, could I also add, you're probably going to say the same thing, but had you talked at all about kind of taking the corner slightly off of that where the middle ginkgo is, sort of, say, from the surface above to the surface, in a line? Is that
You mean
for
angle?
clearer view, viewing through and more safety of the path?
It's an open fence, so you do have view through it now.
Yeah, it's an open fence. I really think it's just a matter of this was the area where the bike path was supposed to go, and so we didn't investigate
Okay.
other areas.
All right.
Straighten it here, they'd have
Are
to
there any other questions?
entire house.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Or they could have this little leftover piece right there.
We were hoping to get some clarification from staff on one of the conditions that was in the staff report, specifically related to the seismic safety of the wall. We will be making a change, not to the, the path plan proposes removing a section of the wall on the, as it turns the corner on 45th Street, and we would expect that we would need to make sure that we were not in any way weakening the structure of the overall wall and take any steps to mitigate that. The way the condition reads, it implies that perhaps a full seismic exploration of the wall and bringing up to current code might be implied, and that we wanted to make sure that isn't what...
That isn't...
Isn't a, well,
Yeah,
we would have a problem with that condition.
We want to make sure that this wall that's next to a public path isn't going to fall down on people if there's an earthquake.
Whose property is the wall now?
I assume it's EBI's.
The 45th Street wall or the 47th Street wall?
It's...
Well, there's
Closer to
actually
45th,
two separate walls.
I think is the one more in question. But I'm sure both of them.
You think they're both?
I don't know.
This is Margaret Salep, who's the facilities project manager for EBI.
So I chatted with both our structural engineer and our design firm that's doing this work, and they both agreed that the way that the clarification is written is actually not the way it would work. That if there were a seismic concern, it would have to be on the side of the city to show that the seismic work was needed. So the city would need to engage in the process to show that there was seismic work needed. That our work would include making sure that the wall remained in the same condition it is. And the proposal right now is for where we remove the access point on the south, a portion of the south extent of the wall. There's a brace frame being installed in that location so that the wall continues to act structurally in the same fashion it does now. But that the way that the wording is that it's actually not allowable that way. That's our two design consultants' opinion from their experience with working with the building department.
So did you have
Well,
Yeah.
I would suggest that, you're asking for approval of a design permit, and the permits are going to suggest that you need to take care of that aspect to make sure that the wall is safe. And the city, it's not the city's responsibility to make sure that your private property is in fact safe. So we're not inclined to revise the permit on that, on the basis of what your engineer has said.
I think part of our feeling is that the seismic, the wall's an existing structure. We're not proposing changes to the wall, and as such, undertaking a full seismic review and any seismic strengthening would be very expensive for the school to endeavor to do, and is not, in our opinion, consistent with the initial the initial condition under which we're developing the path.
I guess our concern is the inconsistency with what the building department says on this point and the language in the condition. The estimate that we have from our engineer is if we were going to do a study and strengthening of the type he might envision, we're talking about $50,000. And if there's a concern in this area, you know, we would of course engage with the city to take on that, but that is a $50,000 add that we did not anticipate. What we anticipated was that the wall would be maintained in its current state with the braced frame, allowing it to continue to act in the same structural way that it acts now.
Braced frame, what's that?
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
Can I just ask you about the timing? If this is not required for another 4 years or so, why are you
Sure, I'm happy
moving
to address
forward?
that. Yeah, we are. This is required as a to be completed at the time that we complete our full build out of the building. We are currently very close to submitting building permits for that project. And this is included as part of that. It's a full document set that includes all the improvements in the building, other site improvements that the city is requiring related to wastewater, not wastewater, but stormwater. And so our intention is to present this as part of that as well. Having to go back later and resubmit separately for this would incur significant additional design resources from the school as well as time. So that's why we're moving forward with this now. I mean, it feels far in advance in the sense that it won't be completed until 2016, but the work is, I mean, the work's actually, well, it's here. So it's rolling.
Chair Coomerly?
Yes.
Just to clarify one point, the Planning Commission held a study session on this path on May 24th, as you may recall. In that study session staff report, which was, what, 4 months ago, it says, the seismic stability of the existing concrete block wall along the eastern property line should be checked. It may need to be upgraded or replaced. Buildings should be consulted about how to do this. It was noted that the wall wraps around onto the 45th Street edge at the southern end, and that part of it will have to be removed. So that was 4 months ago. I don't know if EBI has consulted with the building division about that or not.
Well, I can speak to that. We propose to submit our building permit documents on the 5th of October. That's next week. So we're almost complete. Our engineer has evaluated the wall. I mean, he's been on the site to evaluate it. He's done his analysis on it and determined that the wall is structurally sound and that this would allow it to continue to act in the same fashion that it's acting now. A seismic evaluation is and/or seismic upgrade to bring it to current code is very different than assessing the wall in its current condition and allowing it to act in its current condition. The braced frame, he tells me, is up to current code, but the fact that the city asked us to study the question led us to have our engineer go out and take a look and study the situation. But seismic upgrading and seismic study on the entire wall is not something that we are contemplating.
Okay.
Yeah, the condition doesn't ask for seismic upgrade. It just says provide documentation that verifies the adequacy of the seismic stability of the wall. So if your engineer is comfortable with the seismic stability of the wall and will put his stamp on something that confirms that and the building official accepts that, then I'd say we're done.
Okay. Great. Are there any other questions of the applicant? This is a public hearing, so I'd like to open it. If there's anyone that wishes to comment, please come forward. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to say that there is a need for this pedestrian pathway during the daytime. It'll be a great alternative to walking on San Pablo Avenue, away from the noise and pollution of the daily 42,000 cars driven on it. The new pathway will also serve as a much-needed safer route for Triangle neighborhood children to go to school when the new Emeryville Center of Community Life is built. On the other hand, there is no need for this pathway to be open at night. During the pathway study session last May, Sergeant Dower of the Emeryville Police Department stated that the safest option for this pathway would be for it to be gated and closed at night. He also stated that he did not think the parking area should be open to the pathway. These are professional, well thought out recommendations of our police department and should not be dismissed. As you decide about gates and the hours of operation for this pathway, I'd like you to think about Watergate Boardwalk as an example. It used to be open at night, but due to their own security problems, they now lock it up. And this is in a safe area, only a block away from the police station. Also, I think about the reasons why community gardens are fenced in and locked at night. You are in charge of approving the design for this pathway. And if you do not include safety and crime prevention in its design, you will not have done your job. The people who live around this school already have to deal with the noise and additional traffic EBI creates during the daytime. And now for phase 3, the safety of our neighborhood is in jeopardy. Again, I'd like to remind you, Sergeant Dower has already stated that this pathway is a security concern without gates. The right thing to do for our neighborhood would be to approve this new pathway with the condition that EBI installs the gates on each entrance of the path and require that they be locked at night. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Please come forward. And please sign in after you've spoken.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, I'm John Tan, and I've been a property owner in Emeryville since the year 2000 when I purchased the lot to EBI. My family, I have a wife and 3 children, has lived at 1074A 45th Street since 2004. Our home is directly adjacent to the pedestrian pathway that will be an imminent threat and serious safety concern when it is constructed without gates that lock at night. Since the time we learned of the pathway, my wife, Kyrie Tan, and I have gone to great lengths to find alternatives to make the pathway safer, including filing an appeal, participating in a community meeting with EBI on the 16th of April, and the Planning Commission study session on May 24th. Additionally, we've been in contact with EBI over the past few months about installing gates for safety purposes. Although our contact with EBI has been generally productive, unfortunately at this time EBI is moving forward without the design of the gates due to their conditional use permit, which contains language saying that the gates are not required until security becomes a problem in the future. Well, okay. Having the pathway open at all hours of the night will dramatically increase the likelihood of danger and exposure, dangerous exposure of my family and my tenants, whom also have children, to crime and illegal activity. My children, aged 7 and 8, and our tenants' children have their bedrooms directly on the other side of the wall for the proposed pathway. The layout of the pathway area, the layout of the path includes areas hidden from street view that would invite loitering, provide cover for illegal activity, escape routes, and create discomfort for legitimate pedestrians after dark. Given the nature of the safety issues that will develop on the pathway without gate scenarios, I am strongly discouraging the Planning Commission from taking a wait-and-see approach and asking that the City Council amend the in the future provisions. This provision of the conditional use permit should and can be amended to require security gates on the path today. I'm almost done. There are several other technical, legal, financial, and community issues involved in this proposal. I have provided you with a letter detailing these other points. However, it is the safety issues that concern me, my family, and my neighbors the most, and I ask that you consider this in your deliberations. I thank you for your time and attention, and I trust that you'll do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I brought my own timer. It's a habit. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I'm Kyrie Tan, and I live at 1074A 45th Street. You just heard from my husband, John Tan. Our house flanks the southern half of the pathway being voted on tonight. If the pathway is allowed to be open at night, the safety of my family, my tenants, and their children will be compromised. My kids' bedroom are within 15 feet of the pathway, and strangers will be walking past their bedrooms at all hours of the night, people who have no legitimate reason for being there. While EBI is responsible for the construction and the maintenance of the pathway, I feel that very strongly that it's the city who's responsible for the safety of the people in our community and their well-being. The pathway without gates is not going to be safe at night because the design as it is now does not provide for adequate security to protect the public who will use it. As John said, a pathway without gates will invite loitering, illegal activity, and it will threaten the safety of legitimate pedestrians who use it after dark. A pathway with lockable gates at night is supported by the police department, as Eric alluded to, and that was stated at the study session and should be documented in the staff report. A pathway without gates is a crime scene waiting to happen. It simply is. If the gates are a money issue for EBI, then I feel that the city, as their responsibility for the safety of the public, consider subsidizing the cost of the gates. Let's not let this be an issue about money when the lives of our tenants, our community, and children are at stake. Our safety will be exponentially compromised if the wall gets replaced with a chain link or wrought iron fence. There definitely needs to be some clarity about what's going to happen with that concrete wall if it's not seismically safe, because that's the only thing right now that separates us from the pathway. If it gets replaced with a chain link or a wrought iron fence, we will basically be sitting ducks day and night. And I'd like to point out that currently there is no concrete provisions in their CUP about what type of replacement wall, whether it's an in-kind replacement, it's not stipulated at this point. That makes me feel very uncomfortable. Another wall, not a fence, needs to be built to buffer us from the path if it goes through. Security is going to be a problem in the future, so why wait until later to do something about it? Do something now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, the public comment period is closed, and we will deliberate. Does anyone have any thoughts about gates versus no gates?
Gates now or gates later, that's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's an issue at all.
No.
Yeah, I think it's my understanding that only the council can amend that condition.
Okay, yeah, that is
So that
true.
we can't require the gates.
Well, let's
at
clarify that.
this
The
time.
council can't even amend that condition.
No, we've made that condition.
This is a vested permit, and the only way to amend the conditions on this part of the city would be to go through the same kind of revocation modification process that we're going through with art.com. And there's no basis for that. The applicant could voluntarily apply to modify their conditions, but we can't require them to.
But the condition is written in such a way that the council could impose the gates in the future if they deemed there was a safety concern.
Absolutely, after the path is built, yes.
Okay. So we don't
So my thoughts on this are, I don't like the path the way it's designed. I totally agree with the BPAC that it needs to be a straight shot across so you can see through it. Even in the daytime, I don't like the design as it is, and I think that's really unfortunate because I think EBI has gotten some really mixed signals about we want your path, but we want gates, we don't want gates. There's a lot of stuff going on here. We want the path along the eastern boundary, but that doesn't really work. And I feel in a really bad spot. I don't see a solution here, but I cannot support this path as it is designed right now.
Well, I think we've gone through this a number of times, and everybody has their own disagreements about it, but this is a compromise, and the gates are the big issue. And also, I was curious, it said pedestrian only, so that presume means no bicycles?
That's correct.
And that's been accepted by everyone, I assume.
Well, it's shown in the general plan as a pedestrian
Pedestrian
path.
only.
It's not supposed to be a bicycle path.
No?
I think now that it's asphalt, I think that's going to be harder to
Yeah.
enforce, but
Yeah.
that's, you know,
Well, I'd move
Is what it
approval
is.
as the staff has recommended.
I'll second.
Does anyone have any other comments before we?
I do still have the safety concerns as well, just because of the configuration of the path. I think it's a lovely path if it were open on the west side and it would continue to be visible, but there's going to be a building there. It's going to be more enclosed, and I think it's really problematic. I would rather see improvements to San Pablo Avenue and make that a place. I mean, really, looking back at it, when this was originally considered, there were homes that were along there that would be providing some 24-hour presence along this path, but now it becomes a place where there isn't a 24-hour presence, and it really is connecting. It's another one of these paths that's not connecting a destination to another destination. I mean, the people that are in the Triangle neighborhood, if they're going towards San Pablo Avenue, they're not going to cut across there. There might be some people that might use it to get to the Emeryville Senior Center from a couple of blocks on the north side, but I don't see that there's going to be actually a whole lot of demand for that path. So I love the landscaping along the back side of the property, but I really have the safety concerns, so I have a problem supporting it.
Are you willing to entertain a substitute motion?
Well, are we, it sounds like, excuse me, what we're talking about, you're talking about the mere existence of the path, and others are talking about the configuration of the path. And that path, its location, its configuration is already part of one, it's in the general plan, and two, it's also already part of an approved site plan for this project that was approved by the council. And so all we're really talking about is the design, the details of the design of the path, not whether it's going to exist here or whether it's going to be in a different configuration. The configuration is where it is, and you know, and that's really just sort of the brunt of it, and really what you're being asked to do is approve the design of it. So
Please come up.
Recognizing that there are inherent safety challenges with the path, but also recognizing that pedestrian safety is important in that area for our students, for families, for students traveling to Emory Unified Schools in the area. EBI would entertain a modification to our project that provided some substitute for the path, whether it be a financial contribution to pedestrian improvements on San Pablo or other such item. This is so obviously we wouldn't be able to hit every goal of the existence of the path, but we would be open to that, which I think would potentially be okay.
Well, that was a condition that was done on the path that was to be between the artist co-op and the Pete's plant. And I understand that they did deed the property to the city and gave them the funds to build the path in the future if it was needed, but it was primarily the residents of the artist co-op that objected to the path going in at all. Wasn't that the case?
I don't recall that they objected to it.
Well,
Frankly, that was quite a while ago. I can't remember exactly why.
Well,
Didn't just
they
make
were
Pete's
because they
build it.
have a problem now with people jumping over their wall, apparently. And there would have been nobody else to object.
Well, just let me say that's a possible option here. That is for EBI to deed this 20-foot strip to the city and give the city whatever amount of money it would cost to design and build the path, and then have the city do it at some future date. But the conditions of approval that were approved by the city council require this path to be built prior to the, I believe it's the certificate of occupancy for the last phase of the project. So that would require going back to the city council and getting an amendment to the conditions, which, again, the city cannot unilaterally impose. The applicant would have to request that. Similarly, if the proposal were to eliminate the path altogether in lieu of something else, that also would have to be requested as a modification to the permit by the applicant and approved by the city council. And in both situations, I believe that would have to be first be heard by the planning commission and make a recommendation to the council. Also, it would if we're going to eliminate this path entirely from any future consideration, we should amend the general plan to delete it from the general plan, and also the pedestrian and bicycle plan to delete it from the pedestrian and bicycle plan.
I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't think we would want to do those things. I mean, it's a very.
Too complicated.
It's a. What do I want to say? It's a very obviously missing link in the Triangle neighborhood. I mean, it's you know, as you can't transverse the Triangle from north to south without this path. So.
Well, the path should be further north, further east, of course, but more in the center of the block than at one edge, which it is.
Ideally, yeah. I mean, but you know, I think we work with what we can do, and I always regret that I can't get from 45th to 47th when I walk through the Triangle. So I think it's a very noticeable missing connection.
So just for clarification, Michael, because this has already been approved by the council under these terms, we're not really up for discussion about whether there's fences or not?
Correct.
That's correct. So what,
Gates?
gates.
Yes.
Whether there's a gate or not?
Not right now.
Okay.
So the motion has been made and it's been seconded. Can we?
Nope, is everyone ready?
Commissioner Cardozo made the motion, Commissioner Moss seconded it.
I just want to add, I think that I definitely understand that there are safety concerns, but this path has been, this kind of area for the path has been established by the city council's approval of the project, and I think given, with what the applicant's been given, I think they've done a good job with addressing those safety concerns. I mean, with adding this mirror, with, I mean, just their design philosophy to plant trees that don't, and not lower landscaping that obstructs the view. I mean, they've tried to keep it as, as much of a view through it as possible. I think it is, maybe the shape of it is regrettable. Maybe maybe some of the bigger picture issues are regrettable, but I think with what they've been given, with saying, if by saying, you have a, however wide this thing is, whatever you have, you've been given a 20-foot wide zigzagging piece of land, design it. I think they've done a pretty good job with the design.
Are there any other further comments about the design before we have a vote? I also agree that I'm concerned about the safety issues, and at the same time, it is not what is before us. So I am, it is, and I do believe that Gail brought up a very good point where there was going to be a housing development there, and now there is not. There's a school that is vacant at night for the most part, and that.
Well, the adjacent neighbors that are not happy with the lack of gates can appeal this decision to the city council, which could then decide to put in gates, couldn't they?
Only if the applicant requests a modification to the conditions of approval.
Right, as the way it's stated right now, the pathway has to get built first.
Yeah.
And then the council has to make a determination that there's a safety concern to require the gates.
But the neighbors could appeal our decision of approving this tonight.
But the council can't require the gates before the pathway is built because of the way they approve the condition.
That's right.
Well,
It would be a wasted appeal.
yep. At that point. Please come up. I need to, actually, I need to make a motion to, or I need to, yes, make a motion to reopen the public comment. Do I have a second?
You can do that
Do that
yourself.
without? Okay.
Yeah,
Please come up then.
Decision.
We'll reopen it.
right.
Living right next door to there for the last 12 years and seeing what goes on the other side, even without the path, is frightening. And we have a bird's eye view. We don't mind the path. We don't mind the school. But living on the other side of that wall and having unscrupulous people possibly come down through there being chased by the police. I talked to 5 different police officers that said that if that thing was left open at night, that it was unquestionably a bad decision. They said their eyes were rolling in their heads, that why would you leave a pathway open in the middle of the night? For what reason? It is a huge security thing. We are so frightened to death if someone should be chased by the police or just simply decides to scale this wall and breaks into our house while we're in there. And my kids, my son's not here, I have 3 kids. He went off to college. It puts the fear of God in us. And the fact that all these guidelines are completely sidestepping the simplicity of putting gates in at night is mind-boggling to me. And all these rules and all these different types of laws and things are so brutal that they have not even mentioned the fact that we have lived there for years. And now we're being told we can't even appeal it. I feel unbelievably offended that our existence as residents of Emeryville, and I am in full support of everything that happens, and I didn't even object at all to the school, and even John wants the gates, he just doesn't want to pay for them. It's all about money here, and my kids, I'm telling you, if anything happens, it is going to be really regretful. And I really feel that this process is something's wrong with it. That's all I can say. I really hope you think twice here. My God, with gates.
Thank you. John, could you come up for a moment? In light of the fact that you're not going to need to deal with the earthquake structural engineering of that wall, would you be willing to put in 2 gates?
The issue for us really comes down to cost, and I hate to be callous about that. It's an exceptional cost. It's over $50,000. We're assuming that the gates that you're talking about would need to be open on weekends and in the summer, I assume, when the school's not in session. So it's not something that could be manual, that the school can manually address. So it would need to be automated, which has an additional installation cost, which our contractors and landscape architects estimate to be around $50,000. And then on top of that is the added maintenance of those gates. I mean, now we're talking about enrolling an entire classroom full of kids to put the gates in, and that goes away from the mission of the school. And I'm not trying to be callous, and
However,
we care very much about the safety of our neighbors, and are loath to create something that would potentially cause a problem. But
however, if there was a problem, you would be required potentially.
We accept that. We accept that. Our hope is that our presence and increased presence in the neighborhood will have a positive effect, and that we're not going to encounter those kinds of things. We accept that eventually we may need to do that if there are security concerns. That's the condition that we agreed to when we move forward with this. But we're just not. We can't. I mean, it's not a want to. We just can't. We just don't have the money to do it. So.
Thank you.
Well, can we vote on it now?
We still have that motion up. And
Still, you have a
remind
motion on
me-
the floor to approve the staff recommendation,
Right.
which is to approve the design as submitted with some conditions.
And do we have a second?
Yes, Commissioner Cardoza made the motion and Commissioner Moss seconded it.
Okay. Have a vote.
All right. Commissioner Donaldson?
Having heard the comments of the police department the last time around, I'm going to abstain because I don't feel comfortable with the safety issue, and I don't feel that I have the option of say, it's not the design per se, it's the configuration and the other stuff that I just don't feel comfortable with.
Commissioner Moss?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman?
No.
Vice Chair Cardoza?
Aye.
And Chair Coomerly?
No.
All right, we have 2 ayes, 2 noes, 1 abstention, so that abstention doesn't count, so it's a tie vote, which means the motion fails. So the design is not approved. That could be appealed to the City Council, right? Yeah, this is an action of the Planning Commission on this decision, and the decision was against doing it, and that decision may be appealed to the City Council.
Can we at least give the applicant some direction on what, I would hate for them to go away not knowing what concerns to address, or what, yeah.
Well, I'd like to see it appealed to the city council because I think there's some council decisions that need to be made on this. Because I almost feel like they've been put in an impossible situation, and so have we.
I'm not sure what further decisions the council can make. They can't modify the conditions unilaterally, so any movement would have to be on EBI's part.
So if we had approved it now with putting the gates in immediately,
I don't
we couldn't do. You said we couldn't do that
you can't
either.
Yeah,
do that.
as I see it, the council is required that this pathway be built. We're supposed to approve the design of it. We just denied the design of it, but the applicant still has to build it. So I would just like to give the applicant some direction as to what to do to come back with a design that would, that would be more favorable.
You mean come back to the commission?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, you have to first go to the city council. I think.
well, not necessarily.
But because as I understand, like there's nothing that the council can do to waive this requirement of building the path. So the requirement of building the path stands. The applicant has to build a path, and we have to approve the design of the path.
Right.
So.
But we're not approving the design of the path.
Sure, they can.
Therefore, what's
So-
The council could approve the design on appeal if you can get 3 votes.
This isn't the cheapest design that exists. We really designed this because we wanted this to be a resource for the community and to tie the school to the community. There are less well-designed examples of less well-designed pedestrian paths in Emeryville. You know, I can't speak unilaterally. We have a board, but we could potentially come back with a 6-foot asphalt path with hydro-seeded grass on both sides and capture the savings and put them into gates. We don't feel like that. We feel like we're sort of, now we've gotten to something that doesn't really serve the school, it doesn't serve the community as well as it could. But that's certainly something that we could potentially explore.
If there was a way to...
This is a 200, approximate, we haven't priced it, we don't have construction documents, but it's approximately a...
We have 50% pricing.
Okay. It's approximately a $200,000 path to build for a school, you know, that has a mission that is about educating kids. And, you know, I think we're happy to comply with the requirements that were placed on it. We, you know, we accepted those conditions when we moved forward with our project last spring. But at a certain point, it becomes something that, you know, we just, it's not possible for us to, you know, I think some of the suggestions about straightening the path, it's very difficult to argue with the logic of straightening the path. That would be really great, except that it significantly impairs our ability to make use of the property in the future. So some of them are just, you know, they seem like they should be easy, but they're just not because of the, you know, and again, it's a mission-driven school. You know, we are, you know, we're trying to educate kids here, and that's and I think, you know, the somewhat unfortunate thing of continuing this for us is that it impacts our construction schedule now for our project, and it impacts you know, we're
Sorry.
yeah.
We feel like we've worked in this process for 5 or 6 months specifically on the path, and 16 months since we got the original approval. And we have kids who are enrolled who need classrooms. And as the person who keeps this construction schedule, we got to start. And we can't, and to, as you know, going into the building department with drawings that aren't complete is really expensive, and it's challenging for the city as well as for us. You end up chasing those sorts of things through the process. So we're feeling a hardship here and a worry about our ability to have kids in classrooms for the fall.
Charlie?
Yes?
What are our options going forward, since it has been a tie? The motion failed, basically.
I mean, you're done, basically. You did what you were asked to do, which is to take a vote, and you took the vote. I would say the ball is...
In terms of recommending...
Oh. Well, you can provide them with some direction. I'm not sure what that direction would be, but I think the ball is in EBI's court to either come up with a different design and request you to reconsider based on a different design, or to appeal this decision to the City Council. Those are the options I see, unless I'm missing something.
Well, it sounds like the big issue is the security gate, and we can't touch that. We've been told. And
I guess direction would be to appeal to City Council, and I do apologize that it is extending.
Well, I mean, you could, somebody could make a motion to reconsider your motion if any of the commissioners were inclined to change their votes, but that doesn't sound likely. The two who voted against?
Well, one of them would have to
I'll make that motion.
Well, no, it has to be someone who voted
Oh.
no, would have to make a motion to reconsider, and then that motion would have to pass, and then you'd have to vote again and see if it comes out any different. But I don't see any reason why it would, unless any of you is inclined to change your mind.
I mean, can we at least reconsider it to discuss it a little more?
Is that possible?
Sure.
Yes.
Well,
it's what we can or cannot approve that
discuss it.
is
If you
kind
want to
of
discuss it some more, you can always discuss it.
Okay.
You
All
don't
right.
need to vote to
So-
do that.
Can you think of any
I'm,
magical solutions?
well, I'm
Because
struggling.
you're on a roll tonight. So.
I'm struggling too. I mean, I'm just, you know, a little frustrated because we're being asked to design a box, and I think on its face the merits of the path are valid. I think they're good. I think it's a necessary connection. Whether or not it should be gated or locked at night or straight, or those aren't really issues that we unfortunately have the ability to discuss tonight because of the way it was approved. And so, given that I appreciate the value of it, I personally am going to use this pathway all the time. Because I walk through the Triangle neighborhood all the time, and it always annoys me that I can't get from 45th to 47th. So, I appreciate the value of it. I wish we had the ability to approve gates, because I think that would solve a lot of our problems. But we don't, and the city council still does. They can still, if we approve the design and this pathway gets built, they could immediately decide that there was security concerns and require the gates. They could do that, within a week of it opening, unless the staff is going to tell me otherwise. They could do that, and that would solve some problems. So I have no idea if the council's interested in gates or what their approach is going to be. I just, I feel like we have a responsibility to approve this box that we've been given. And I think with what they've been given, they've done the best job that they could do, essentially.
I agree, and the council has given direction to proceed without the gates. That was their direction. So
if the neighbors appeal our decision to the city council, couldn't the city council then change their prior decision?
No, to reiterate, the conditions of approval are now vested. The project is vested. It's got a certificate of occupancy. The only way the conditions of approval can be modified are either through a revocation and modification process, which requires the whole evidentiary hearing thing that there's a nuisance, which in this case would be hard to show, or the applicant has to voluntarily apply to modify their conditions. The city council cannot unilaterally change the conditions.
it disturbs me that the school has done a lot to make this pedestrian walkway very attractive and useful, and at the same time that there are serious safety considerations at night, especially.
Let me say this: are there anything that? So it seems like there are some concerns about safety. Is there anything on the table? Are there any solutions that would serve to allay any of those fears? I mean, because we do have the ability to affect the design of the path, so we could add some conditions of approval to require some other things that might
more landscaping or something.
Yeah, as far as the design. I mean, if we wanted another mirror, or we wanted a larger mirror, or we wanted, I'm just thinking out loud here, but and I'm just putting this out there.
But the gates are not an issue that we can.
The gates are not something that we can approve.
I think they've done an excellent job with designing, and I'm in the space allotted. I don't know how.
Yeah.
It could possibly,
Existing lights on
any
the
other,
wall.
any ideas?
I guess the only thing that I can think of is simplifying the design and putting the gates and going low budget on the design of the path and put the money into the safety.
That would be an alternative. Would be an alternative. Value engineering.
I'm sorry, missed a low budget design for the path and then put the money into the gates?
Right.
Well, I think that's what Mr. Horsch suggested, but I'm not sure that's what anybody wants.
That's the only option I can think of that I can control.
It's not,
A great one.
What about additional lighting?
It's a blind corner. It's like access to people's property next door.
we have a potential solution.
Come up. Yes, we'll open the public hearing.
Yeah, okay. Whatever.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Well, I've been a builder for about 35 years, and there could be some solutions that would save.
And lift it up, please?
Oh, sure. There could be some solutions that would save some money by installing a gate at both ends, or one in the middle, and leaving that parking lot on the north side open as part of that fence, that 20-foot gate that slides. There could be a modification there so it closed off that area that passes, that's going to let people flow through there. That's one option. And then, of course, if they didn't have to demolish the whole wall and they were just to cut a hole in it and get a design, by keeping people out of that area at night, it would solve several problems that may save money in the long run for EBI in terms of just people sleeping in there and littering and doing all kinds of things. Again, there seems to be ways a lot of ways to get this done and keep the same design. I think the design is fine. It's just the fact that we are so subjected to people going through there, and people have come over the wall plenty of times. In the middle of the night when we're sleeping, I got to tell you, it puts the fear of God in me. If they cut a hole in the wall at the end, they would save a lot of money in demolition. They could get some alternative pricing, and I think it's reasonable to attempt to look at it that way, that it might weigh itself out in the end if that is closed off. But do you guys really want it open all night long anyway? Is there a reason for it? I'm just curious.
It comes down.
Because it really freaks us out.
Sir?
You need to speak into the microphone.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Sure. I was just trying to talk to John and his wife. Because in the meeting, John's wife inclined the gates were a good idea. But in any event, there's probably a lot of ways to analyze it if we give it time. That would be my hope. As a contractor, I've looked at things 100 ways to find the best, most economical solution for the best product for everybody. And thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Coomerly, just to clarify, we've heard of several people comment about the demolition of this wall. There's no proposal to demolish this existing wall.
No. There's the end piece that was talked about.
Oh, yeah, there's the piece that wraps onto 45th Street. That has to be demolished. But the wall along the eastern property line is not proposed to be demolished.
No.
The public meeting's over.
I think she reopened it.
It's reopened.
Yes, and mine is just Ruth Major and commissioners. I just wanted to say one thing. It's distressing all around for everyone, including you. But there are a lot of grants out there for security that are connected to schools. So what I'm suggesting is if somebody could do some research in that area, there may be a way to pay for the gates through some grants, because there's specific grants around security for schools. So it's just a suggestion.
Thank you. Okay.
I'd like to clarify one other thing about the gates. As Ms. Desai mentioned in her presentation, the conditions of approval explicitly say that EBI will be responsible for both installing, maintaining, and operating, i.e. opening and closing the gates. City staff is not going to do that. The police are not going to do that. It's going to be EBI's responsibility to make sure the gates are open and closed whenever they need to be open and closed. And so any gate design would have to take that into consideration.
I just want to add one more thing. So I just realized that I just kind of had this realization that, so we've kind of been discussing, possibly, like, the potential to kind of value engineer it, to get more, to cut down the cost of the design, to be able to save some money to add the gates. In that scenario, the applicant would have to voluntarily do that because we can't require them to build the gates. So they would have to voluntarily do that and come back to us. But what we would get is a pathway that was designed more cheaply and gates. If we were to approve what they've, something similar to what they've designed here, we would get a well-designed pathway. And if there are security concerns, the council can make that determination and require them to build the gates. So we'd be getting a well-designed pathway and still be getting the gates if there are security concerns. And EBI would have to pay for the cost of those gates.
But that would be after some security issues had arisen.
I mean, what constitutes a security
That's the
concern?
council's discretion. So, if they're inclined to make that finding very easily, then that's their decision.
Okay. Charlie, I have one other question.
Yes, ma'am.
In the in the possibility of becoming a flip-flopper, is it possible to retake a vote?
Absolutely. Somebody who voted no would have to make the motion to reconsider. That motion would have to pass by 3 votes, I guess, and then you just vote again.
Okay. I would like to make a motion, as one of the no's, to reconsider this path and to approve it as designed. I think
those have to be separate motions.
You're just making a motion to reconsider.
Making a motion to
That's
reconsider.
all you got to do right now.
And I just wanted to add that I think what Sean was saying is in the spirit of safety, that the council, in its ultimate wisdom and understanding budgets, will be able to determine what constitutes a safety issue.
And I think we can definitely voice I think we have voiced our concerns here to the council that we have concerns about safety, and I think most of us would encourage them to, to be very, what do I want to say? To have an eagle eye on this issue and be very ready to make that determination.
Vigilant.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, ready to vote? This is just a vote on whether or not to reconsider your motion. Commissioner Donaldson?
Aye.
Commissioner Moss?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman?
No.
Vice Chair Cardoza?
Aye.
Chair Kummerly?
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 no. The motion is approved, so you may now reconsider this item.
Now I'd like to reconsider this project as proposed and move to approve it with the condition, with no condition,
Well, with the
in that-
conditions established.
with the understanding that City Council will, in its, like I said, in its ultimate wisdom, will make sure that they have an eagle eye on it and that security issues are closely watched and a fence approved as soon as any sign of problems arise.
A gate, you mean? A gate.
A gate.
Gates.
That's right. Put in gates, yes.
Right.
I mean, you're not modifying you can't modify the
She's just
the
stating.
existing condition, but those are your sentiments.
Those are just my sentiments. I'm sorry.
Sentiments of the commission.
Excuse me. Yes.
Is there a
Do
second?
I have a second?
I'll second that.
Are you ready to vote?
Yes.
All right. Commissioner Donaldson.
I'm still going to abstain, and I would just encourage that if there's any way that the two of you can work together to come up with some other proposal, that would be wonderful.
Commissioner Moss.
I echo Commissioner Donaldson's sentiments.
Commissioner Sherman?
No.
Commissioner Vice Chair Cardoza?
Aye.
And Chair Coomerly.
Aye, and I also would like to see a solution worked out, hopefully between all of you.
3 ayes, 1 no, 1 abstention. The path design is approved, and this decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.